of Swadeshi Jagaran Manch. So he said, no, please don't take any drastic. I said, I'm driving to the Prime Minister's house and I'll tender my resignation. He said, don't do anything of this kind, come to the meeting and we'll sort it out there. So I went to the meeting. Obviously, he would have spoken about it to Vajpayee. And in his summing up speech, Vajpayee did not name either me or Dattopant Tengdi. But he said, things like this were happening and we were trying to influence government policies and we should not be deterred, we are on the right path and my ministers are on the right path, and very soothing words. But that apart, I'll tell you another story. We were meeting in the national executive of the Bharatiya Janata Party somewhere, and the economic resolution had to be drafted. Now, since I was finance minister, even earlier, I used to be part of the drafting committee. So, and the other person who was in the drafting committee was Govindacharya.
Right.
So he was insisting on a certain formulation to be included in in the national that resolution, and I was resisting. So we didn't reach any conclusion. In the evening, I was attending a public rally, and I got a call from Vajpayee. So I went backstage to listen to him. Very few people had mobile phones in those days, but we had the late lamented Anant Kumar with us. He was carrying a mobile phone on which this call came. Vajpayee told me that I've heard about what's happening in the drafting committee. Don't accept what you're being forced to accept. After which I went back and completely ruled out that suggestion which was being made. Now the economic liberalization policy, which was started when Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister and Manmohan Singh was the Finance Minister, was followed both in letter and spirit by Vajpayee.
Yes.
Now Vajpayee was not a man of detail, but he was in a, with all the experience that he had of public life, he was able to give us direction in which we must move.
True.
And that was liberal and democratic.
Right. Can Modi learn something from Vajpayee's model of economic management? What can Mr. Modi learn from how to reform the economy, how to manage the politics to reform the economy? What lessons can Modi draw from Vajpayee?
On the economy, I'll defer to Yashwant Sir, but generally what it seems to be, sometimes in some of his speeches, he seems to be channeling his inner Vajpayee, saying all the right things.
He did.
But he doesn't implement them, and that's the big difference.
Right.
Very rarely do you find the kind of, remember he went to Kashmir and said, how can you go for terrorism when we're trying to promote tourism? and a few better ones, slightly more euphonious in Hindi, about gale lagta hai, gali nahi, sort of whatever, not bullets, but embraces anyway.
Yes.
To cut a long story short, he says those things, but unlike Vajpayee, he doesn't act on them. And I think that's that. If he could only start implementing some of the thoughts that he has expressed publicly, he might actually serve the country
Right, and on
better.
foreign policy also, Vajpayee was in fact able to achieve a bipartisan consensus on foreign policy. In fact, there's a wonderful story about the 1994 UN vote in Geneva, which Vajpayee led the delegation.
That was Narasimha Rao's
decision. And how Salman Khurshid and Vajpayee were together in that delegation.
Right.
And Salman Khurshid told me this wonderful story of how they, after the meeting, they went shopping for a doll. Because Vajpayee wanted to buy a doll for his granddaughter, and there was much bonhomie between Vajpayee and Salman Khurshid. Is that again is not possible today? Is there that kind of bipartisan consensus on
to begin with,
foreign
he was
policy?
sent as the head of delegation, and the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs was his deputy.
Yes.
Which is unthinkable in the present government.
I'd like to say a few words here. We remember that famous episode of Vajpayee leading that delegation.
Yes.
But I'd like to point out to you that when Indira Ji was the Prime Minister and in East Bengal, all those, the repression was taking place, she picked up Jayaprakash Narayan,
Right.
Yes, that's
traveled
right.
to the world capitals and tell the elite and the people there in government what was happening in India. And I remember this personally because I was working on the commercial side in our embassy in Bonn, Germany in those days, West Germany to be precise. And because JP and Prabhati ji were coming to Bonn, Ambassador Keval Singh gave my wife and me the responsibility to look after them.
Right.
You know, so there was a long-standing tradition of opposition or people of eminence being taken into confidence. You know, not like these ministers full of hubris going to the neighboring countries.
So, and even in 1988, so just to extend that, in 1988 when Vajpayee was ill, he had a kidney ailment. It was Rajiv Gandhi who actually sent him on a UN delegation to New York so that his kidney ailment could be looked after. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister then when he sent Vajpayee. There's a hilarious story about this, which I'll tell you because it's so funny. Actually, one of the things that Mr. Modi can learn from Mr. Vajpayee is a sense of humor. You know, because Vajpayee was really so funny. So Rajiv Gandhi sends Vajpayee on this UN delegation to New York to get his treatment done. And when he goes there, he finds that this is something, it's a very serious ailment, and he possibly cancer. So Vajpayee wrote a poem at that point, Maut Se Than Gayi. That was a poem he wrote at that point. And the poem was sent to India and circulated in the Sangh Parivar, and there was much fluster because they thought, oh my God, Vajpayee ji maut ke bare mein likh rahe hain, he's written that he's dying, is he actually dying? And there was this feeling that, Vajpayee is at the door of death. It turned out that actually the ailment was not serious and it was easily cured, and Vajpayee was soon on his way back to India. And he was on the plane and he landed in Delhi, and he found that there were crowds of, Sangh Parivar people who had come to see him. And so he was looking at them saying, my God, why are so many people here? And Shiv Kumar, his assistant who was with him, said, Dekhiye, Vajpayee said, look, how many people have come to see you? So Vajpayee turned around to Shiv Kumar, and Shiv Kumar told me this in an interview, and said, ये सोच रहे हैं कि अभी तो मौत का दस्तावेज लिखकर भेजा था, अब जिंदा कैसे वापस आ गया? So, that was, I thought, very funny because it showed a kind of distance as well from his party. And that's the point that I want to again now come to about Vajpayee's personal life and how, in a way, how bohemian it was and how unconventional it was. He lived all his life with a woman he wasn't married to and who was married herself. He lived with her husband, her 2 children. So, and adopted them, and this was this, man at the head of the party of Bharatiya Sanskriti and, conservative Hindu values, and he was a bohemian himself. How did that work? Is it because he was irreverent, basically? What's your reading of that?
Well, I suppose there were some people in the Sangh Parivar and within the BJP who didn't like it, quite frankly. And I would like to name the gentleman because he's now not in our midst. He's up there somewhere.
Yes.
But
Go down here.
Go down here.
But he had come out with that very derogatory
Yes.
statement.
I've put it to the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of the call girl.
Yes.
But that's why I didn't care about all this. And the BJP and the Sangh Parivar had to learn to live with it.
Yeah.
There was nothing they could do. I mean, there were a few things on which Vajpayee will not make any compromise.
But was he distant from the Sangh Parivar for this reason, for his personal life? Did that distance him
That distance was because of his personal life as well as because of his beliefs.
Right.
Also because of his beliefs.
And yet, curiously, when Maharaj Madhok had his fallout with Vajpayee, he wrote a very bitter book.
Very bitter.
Which I've read, and which actually said that Vajpayee was the agent of the RSS who pushed Madhok out of the BJ, out of the Jansan. So, you know, very difficult. He's surely had moments of great closeness to them, even while he did defy them. I think he was urged initially not to pursue this particular lifestyle. He told them they can mind their own business.